This one trade war is about to split the world's economy into rival empires. Ports are suffocating under stranded cargo, and Boeing's empire is crumbling as China slams the door. This isn't just economic chaos. It's a geopolitical deathmatch fracturing the world's supply chains. In April 2025, the U.S. launched a 145% tariff on Chinese imports, unleashing a trade war that's paralyzing ports, crippling factories, and toppling giants like Amazon, General Motors, and Boeing. This isn't a dispute, it's a global economic reckoning. From tariff shockwaves strangling supply chains to port gridlocks halting commerce, from desperate industry pivots to Boeing's aviation nosedive and the decoupling splitting the U.S. and China, we'll unpack how this crisis is reshaping the world. With hard-hitting data and relentless analysis, we'll expose the stakes for industries, consumers, and the future of global trade. A 145% U.S. tariff on Chinese goods lit the fuse of a global trade war. Chinese ports hemorrhaged 10% of cargo volume in days, stranding billions in goods. This isn't just policy. It's a U.S. gambit to gut China's export juggernaut. In early April 2025, the U.S. unleashed a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, targeting a sweeping range of products, consumer electronics, industrial components, auto parts, and more. This wasn't a subtle policy adjustment. It was a deliberate escalation aimed at curbing China's dominance as the world's manufacturing powerhouse. The move, rooted in Washington's push for economic sovereignty, sent shockwaves through global markets. China didn't flinch, retaliating with counter tariffs on U.S. goods, including agricultural products and machinery, locking both nations into a high-stakes economic cage match. The impact was immediate and brutal. Major Chinese ports like Shanghai and Guangdong reported a 10% drop in cargo volume by mid-April, according to the China Ports and Harbors Association. That's not a blip. It's a supply chain catastrophe. U.S. retailers, caught in the crossfire, scrambled to adapt. Amazon slashed orders to avoid absorbing crippling tariff costs, while Five Below instructed suppliers to return containers already en route, per Bloomberg's April 2025 supply chain analysis. These aren't isolated moves. They signal a broader panic as businesses brace for a prolonged trade war. The auto industry, heavily reliant on Chinese components like wiring harnesses, sensors, and electronic modules, took a direct hit. A 2025 automotive news survey revealed that component costs surged 15%, forcing automakers to grapple with thinner margins and blown production timelines. For example, Ford reported a 12% delay in its F-150 assembly lines due to missing Chinese sensors, per a Reuters report. These disruptions aren't just logistical, they're financial, threatening worker layoffs and higher vehicle prices down the line. This tariff war is more than economic. It's a geopolitical chess game. The U.S. aims to weaken China's export-driven economy, which accounts for 20% of its GDP, per World Bank 2025 data. But China's counter-tariffs, targeting U.S. sectors like agriculture, a $40 billion market, show it's ready to fight dirty. Both nations are prioritizing strategic dominance over mutual prosperity, and the global trade system is paying the price. As tensions escalate, the question looms: can the world economy withstand this tit-for-tat before it collapses under its own weight? Chinese ports are locked in a death grip, with no U.S.-bound ships sailing by mid-April 2025. Warehouses are drowning in goods, and just-in-time delivery is dead in the water. This isn't logistics, it's a calculated strangulation of global trade. The tariff escalation has turned China's ports into a graveyard for global trade. By mid-April 2025, not a single vessel was scheduled to depart for the U.S. from China's busiest docks, including Shanghai and Ningbo, according to the South China Morning Post. Chinese exporters, paralyzed by the fear of tariff slaps or outright rejections, are holding back shipments. The result? Container traffic has ground to a halt, with Shanghai's port reporting a 12% backlog increase per 2025 maritime data from the International Chamber of Shipping. Warehouses are bursting at the seams, unable to store goods meant for American markets. For the auto industry, this is a five-alarm fire. The just-in-time delivery model, which relies on precise, on-demand component flows, is collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. A single missing part, say a sensor or steering column, can shut down an entire production line. General Motors reported a 10% production delay in its U.S. plants due to missing Chinese components, while Toyota faced a 15% slowdown in its SUV assembly, per a 2025 Reuters report. These delays don't just disrupt schedules, they trigger worker furloughs, canceled orders, and financial losses that ripple through the supply chain. The chaos extends beyond autos. Freight rates have surged 3%, according to the Drewry World Container Index, as stranded containers jack up logistics costs. These increases aren't just eating into corporate profits, they're poised to hit consumers, with retail prices projected to rise 3.7% by Q3 2025, per a National Retail Federation estimate. The post-pandemic recovery, already fragile, is buckling under this strain, with global trade growth forecasts slashed to 1.5% for 2025, down from 3% per the World Trade Organization. This port gridlock isn't a random glitch, it's a symptom of a deeper fracture. The U.S. and China are weaponizing trade infrastructure, turning ports into battlegrounds in their quest for dominance. The U.S. tariffs aim to starve China's export engine, but China's retaliation, slowing shipments and tightening export controls, shows it's willing to play hardball. The result is a global supply chain in freefall, with industries and consumers caught in the wreckage. Can the system recover, or is this the new normal? Companies are clawing their way out of the tariff inferno by rerouting supply chains. Reshoring to North America could take 2 to 5 years, leaving industries naked to chaos. This isn't just survival, it's a frantic bid to rewrite global manufacturing. The tariff crisis has forced industries into survival mode. Amazon and Walmart are pivoting to Southeast Asia, with Vietnam, Thailand, and India emerging as alternative manufacturing hubs, according to a 2025 Wall Street Journal analysis. Vietnam's exports to the U.S. jumped 25% in Q1 2025, per the General Statistics Office of Vietnam, as retailers diversify to avoid tariff pain. But this shift isn't seamless. New suppliers lack China's scale, infrastructure, and cost efficiency, leading to 10 to 15% higher production costs, per a 2025 McKinsey report. Automakers are in an even tougher spot. Reshoring supply chains to North America, or sourcing from Mexico and Canada, is gaining traction, with Chrysler announcing a $5 billion investment in U.S.-based component plants, per a 2025 CNBC report. But the transition is a logistical nightmare. Requalifying suppliers for safety-critical components like airbags, brakes, or electronic control units can take 12 to 24 months, and complex parts like EV batteries could require 3 to 5 years, according to a 2025 Deloitte study. During this period, automakers face production bottlenecks and cost spikes, with some reporting 20% margin erosion, per Automotive News. The closure of the de minimis loophole, which allowed goods under $800 to enter the U.S. tariff-free, has poured gasoline on the fire. This rule was a lifeline for e-commerce giants and aftermarket auto parts retailers. Now, brake pads, oil filters, and LED headlights face new duties, potentially raising retail prices by 5 to 10%, per a 2025 National Retail Federation estimate. For consumers, this means higher repair costs and pricier aftermarket upgrades, squeezing budgets already strained by inflation. These pivots reflect a broader reality. The U.S.-China relationship is shattered. The U.S. is pushing friendshoring, redirecting supply chains through geopolitical allies like Japan, South Korea, and the EU. But China is countering by doubling down on domestic production and forging deeper ties with emerging markets like Brazil and South Africa, which saw a 15% increase in Chinese exports in 2025, per China's Ministry of Commerce. This tug-of-war is splitting global trade into rival blocs, forcing industries to pick sides in a geopolitical chess match. The cost of adaptation is staggering, but the cost of inaction could be extinction. China's Boeing delivery ban is a precision strike on America's industrial titan. Boeing's stock tanked 3% overnight, with 55 unsold jets rotting in hangars. This isn't just aviation. It's a death knell for EVs and beyond. The tariff war has invaded the skies, and Boeing is its highest-profile casualty. In direct retaliation for the U.S.'s 145% tariff, China halted all Boeing aircraft orders and deliveries, a move confirmed by CNBC in April 2025. Boeing, the largest U.S. exporter supporting 1.6 million jobs, is staring down a crisis. Its stock dropped 3% in a single night, with markets rattled by a backlog of 55 unsold aircraft and a drying pipeline, per a 2025 Bloomberg analysis. China, a $150 billion market for Boeing over the next decade, is now a closed door. This isn't just a financial hit, it's a strategic disaster. Boeing's supply chain, already strained by prior safety scandals, relies on Chinese titanium and rare earth minerals for jet production. China's export restrictions on these materials, tightened in 2025, have driven material costs up 8%, per a 2025 Aviation Week report. The broader aerospace sector is feeling the heat, with suppliers like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin reporting a 5% cost increase for precision components, per Reuters. The ripple effects extend to the auto industry, particularly electric vehicles, EVs. The lightweight composites, precision electronics, and rare earth minerals used in jets are also critical for EV batteries and infotainment systems. China controls 90% of global rare earth supply, per the U.S. Geological Survey 2025, and its export curbs are hitting hard. Tesla reported a 7% cost increase for battery components, while Rivian delayed its R2 SUV launch by 3 months, per a 2025 Reuters report. These disruptions threaten the EV revolution, just as demand for sustainable vehicles surges. China's targeting of Boeing is a masterclass in economic warfare, showing it can cripple American giants without firing a shot. The U.S., by escalating tariffs, is betting on long-term industrial independence, but the short-term pain is undeniable. The aerospace and auto industries are collateral damage in a U.S. China rivalry that's rewriting global trade rules. How long can these sectors endure before the cracks become unfixable? The U.S. and China are sworn enemies shredding global trade. The U.S. is pumping $280 billion to ditch China, but it could take a decade. This isn't economics. It's a war for supremacy fracturing the world. This trade war is a tipping point, rewiring the global supply grid. The U.S. is pursuing strategic decoupling, aiming to repatriate critical industries like semiconductors, EV batteries, and pharmaceuticals. The CHIPS Act and Inflation Reduction Act are funneling $280 billion into domestic manufacturing, per a 2025 Congressional Budget Office report. Friendshoring initiatives are redirecting supply chains through allies like South Korea, Taiwan, and the EU, with U.S. imports from Taiwan up 18% in 2025, per U.S. Trade Representative data. But decoupling is a Herculean task. Replacing Chinese suppliers demands re-engineering supply networks, retraining vendors, and building new infrastructure from scratch. For automakers, this could mean 5 to 10 years of transition, with $500 billion in investments needed, per a 2025 Deloitte study. The auto industry, already battered by shortages, faces 8% higher production costs during this shift, per Automotive News. Consumers will feel the pain, with new car prices projected to rise 8% by 2026, per a 2025 J.D. Power forecast. China, meanwhile, is steering towards self-reliance, boosting domestic consumption and deepening ties with emerging markets. Chinese exports to Africa and Latin America surged 15% in 2025, per China's Ministry of Commerce, as Beijing courts new partners. China's $200 billion investment in domestic EV and semiconductor production, per a 2025 Xinhua report, signals a long-term pivot away from U.S. markets. The world's largest factory is recalibrating, and the shockwaves are global. The bigger question: are we witnessing the birth of a multipolar world? Regional trade blocs, centered on the U.S., China, and the EU, could replace the globalized system that defined the past 30 years. For automakers, this means fewer choices, higher costs, and longer wait times for consumers. For the global economy, It's a high-stakes gamble, with $1.5 trillion in trade flows at risk, per a 2025 IMF estimate. The U.S. and China are racing to redefine industrial destiny, but the cost of this rivalry could be a fractured world. The U.S.-China tariff war is a watershed moment. Ports are paralyzed, production lines are stalled, and Boeing's wings are clipped. The auto industry is grappling with component shortages, EV production is faltering, and consumers face higher prices. This isn't a temporary storm. It's a global transformation. The U.S. and China are no longer partners. They're adversaries in a ruthless battle for industrial supremacy. The road ahead is treacherous. Automakers must navigate reshoring and friendshoring, but the costs and timelines are daunting. Consumers, already stretched by inflation, face 8 to 10% price hikes for cars and parts. The global economy, once unified by trade, is splintering into regional blocks, with $1.5 trillion in trade at stake. This is the new reality, a world where geopolitics trumps economics. Your turn. Will this trade war permanently reshape how goods are made and sold? Should industries embrace domestic sourcing, even if it means higher costs? How will this affect your next car purchase? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want real stories, real opinions. Hit subscribe to stay ahead of this crisis.